significant milestone for our community as we continue. It is really a milestone with Anthony Savari, who will be delivering a talk on Interculture. Before this entire event, including all interactions and contents, chat box are being recorded. To ensure the lecture proceeds without interruption, we kindly request all participants to keep their microphones on mute throughout the presentation. And the lecture will run for approximately 60 minutes, followed by a Q&A session. I request Bhavna to deliver a welcome address followed by an introduction of the speaker.
Thank you, Sanket. Yes, good evening, everybody present over here. Myself, Bhavna, from School of Sanskrit, Philosophy and Indic Studies, welcome you all to this talk. Uh, I welcome Professor Koshit Harakan, the professor of the school, and the speaker, Dr. Anthony Savari Raj. He's a senior lecturer at the Department of Language, Linguistics and Philosophy, Faculties of Humanities and Education at the University of West Indies at Mona, Jamaica, and formerly a professor of philosophy and head Department of Arts at Manipal University, Jaipur, Rajasthan. He has served earlier as a lecturer at the Department of Philosophy, University of Madras, for more than a decade. His areas of interest and expertise include intercultural philosophy, cross-cultural philosophy of religion, modern Western philosophy, eco-philosophy, technology and human values, and Raymond Paniker's thought. He has enjoyed several national as well as international research fellowships, such as Charles Wallace Visiting Fellowship at University of Bristol, UK, and the Woodstock International Visiting Fellowship, Georgetown University, Washington, D.C., US. He has authored three books, including A New Hermeneutic of Reality, Raymond Paniker's Cosmo-Theandric Vision, and has co-edited one volume. He has, to his credit, numerous research articles in several reputed national and international scholarly journals. He has been a visiting professor of philosophy in several prestigious institutions of India, including IIT Madras, and he has enjoyed 2012 and 13 Fulbright Nehru visiting research lecturership at George Mason University, Department of Religious Studies, Fairfax, VAUS. Dr. Anthony has served as ICCR Chair of Indian Studies, deputed by Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India at the University of West Indies, Jamaica, from 2019 to 21. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, you can begin, sir.
Okay. So, good afternoon, friends, and you can wish me good morning. And thank you all for your kind presence. First and foremost, let me offer my profound gratitude to Goa University, and in particular to the School of Sanskrit, Philosophy and Indic Studies, very especially the
there is some disturbance. I think head philosophy department has to mute. Hello. Hello.
yes, yeah, I'm hearing voices. So
Yeah.
okay,
Just
am I audible? Yeah. Oh. So, Sangat, can I continue?
Yes, sir, you may begin with
Yes, sir. Yes,
Uh,
sir.
so, very specially, I would like to be thankful to the organizers of this meet, especially Mr. Sangat Shantaram, and of course, very, very specially, my good and age-old friend, Professor Koshi, who has made this privilege possible. Really honored by this precious opportunity. Friends, as you are aware, I am speaking from the Caribbean shore, Jamaica, and the time now here is very early in the morning. So, in a way, I have burnt the midnight oil to keep myself awake, not to fall asleep, and I have renounced my morning slumber to offer you now afternoon slumber. Okay, so no problem. So, I would like my brief sharing this afternoon for you to be a small contribution to dialogue of cultures, which we may call as interculture. As you know, the novum, the novelty of our time seems to be the meeting of cultures, and philosophy being a very important, salient dimension of culture. I just begin by saying a word on philosophy. Okay. Philosophy, as you know, is etymologically defined as love of wisdom. But I'm just wondering if we could also consider philosophy as not only as love of wisdom, but also as wisdom of love, given the context and the need of our times. It is not just love of wisdom, but it could also be wisdom of love. What do I mean by that? So perhaps we should recollect Karl Marx, the philosopher, who criticized that the philosophers have only interpreted the world. The point is to change the world. So, of course, this is a very serious remark from Karl Marx, and but we could also gently remind Karl Marx the task of philosophers is not only to interpret or to change the world, but also it is, and in fact, more importantly, to love the world, without, of course, stopping to interpret or change the world. Loving the world is becoming very crucial in our times. So, why I say so? Traditionally, an enlightened, a loving, and a healing involvement with the world has been the threefold task of philosophy in almost all the cultures. And I believe this task becomes much more crucial in our present cross cultural situation. And I just mentioned that the novelty, the novum of our time is the increasing meeting of peoples and cultures. And Karl Jaspers would call our moment as the second axial age, an age in which cultures, religions, worldviews, disciplines, persons are meeting on a scale which we have never experienced before. There seems to be a kind of a cross-cultural wind blowing, and there is a realization that in our crossing the borders situation, no single culture, no single religion, no single worldview, no single discipline, and no single person can even face, let alone solve any of our human problem single-handedly. We need a cross-cultural sharing, and I would even say we need a cross-cultural healing. And yet, there seems to be a paradoxical situation. On the one hand, there is a meeting and mingling of cultures, which of course the globalization well represents. But there seems to be equally an experience of closing in, closing up, closing down, the experience of fanaticism, an absolutism of all sorts, with the conviction truth is one and I alone have it. This reductio ad uno, that is, reducing everything to one unit, one form, one truth, seems to have come a very, very long way in the history of humanity. As human mind, after all, would like to unify and homogenize reality, of course, in an effort to understand. And this effort towards monomorphism, monolithic unity, or monistic unity has had a very, very long history in the history of human thinking, starting from the quest towards one God, establishing one God, one empire, one church, one pope, one civilization, one economy, one development, and so on. Of course, now this is passé. We have a contemporary version or representation of the same quest in the name of one technological network, one digital network of everything. And of course, the strength and weakness of this reduction of everything into one network is everything can be reduced to calculation. Reality is calculus. When Galileo Galilei stated that nature is written in mathematical language, was he really praising nature? Well, it appears so, but his one other statement seems to betray his real intent. He has also stated nature is an enemy whose secrets are to be extracted. So, on the one hand, he says nature is written in mathematical language, giving the idea that nature has got such precision and beauty. But his other statement that nature is an enemy whose secrets are to be extracted. These two statements boil down to his basic belief that the entire fish in the ocean of reality can be captured by the mathematical and calculating net. And this is in very striking contrast to the traditional wisdoms of the world, especially on what it means to be human, which has resisted this kind of reductio ad uno, a reduction of reality to one form, namely any monomorphism. So, and the traditional understanding of the human is very interesting and very revealing. And to the question, who is human, traditional cultures and wisdoms answer, a human is one who walks on earth under the sky joyfully and consciously. I repeat, a human is one who walks on earth under the sky joyfully and consciously. Now, if you notice, there are three symbols emerging in this understanding of what it means to be human in the traditional wisdoms. First, we have the symbol of the earth, the ground, which is, of course, corresponding to our body. And then we have the symbol of the sky, which corresponds to the dimension of what we may call evermore, or an element of unfinishedness or endlessness, both in us and in the world. And of course, there is the third dimension, namely consciousness or rationality, representing the human who walks in between. So the definition, a human is one who walks on earth under the sky joyfully and consciously. In this definition, there is affirmation of the three-dimensionality of reality, the material, the human, and the divine, cosmotheandric, to use the neologism of Indo-Spanish philosopher, theologian Raymond Panica. In this cosmotheandric vision, the divine is the evermore or inexhaustible dimension of reality, which is represented by the sky. The cosmic is the material or the tangible dimension of reality, the earthly, the worldly dimension, which is the address by which even the humans and divine are recognized. And we have the rational dimension, the human dimension, who qualifies to be human by being rational. So, on the one hand, there is the affirmation of the threefold reality of cosmic, human, and divine. And correspondingly, in human beings, there is the affirmation of sensation, the body, intellection, the mind, and intuition, the sky or the heart. So, this three-dimensionality of being and knowing has been maintained by almost all the traditional cultures, including the Western tradition, until the arrival of the recent modern Western technological mentality, which has reduced the threefold reality of human, divine, cosmic merely to human beings. The first reduction is reducing the tripartite, threefold reality into one reality, namely human being. Human is the measure of all things, Protagoras, we are reminded. And then there is the reduction of human beings to being male, and then male to his thinking, and then thinking to his reasoning, and finally reasoning to calculation. See the reductionism? The threefold reality, cosmic, human, divine, is reduced to human beings, and human beings are reduced to male, and males are reduced to their thinking capacity, and thinking is reduced to rationality, and rationality is finally is reduced to calculation. So reality has become calculus. So anthropocentrism, human is the center. Androcentrism, male is the center. Logocentrism, reason as the center. And technocentrism, technology as the center, have become the operating words guiding our present moment. And then, sadly, this reductionism has tremendous implications for the environment. And of course, eco crisis is immediately there at the door. Because reductionism believes firmly in a kind of hunter's epistemology, which is assisted by the conviction that we are all rational beings and the world is just a blind stuff and is meant as resources. The world is just resources. And which has spilled over into also human beings, human resource development. So humans are also seen as resources, human resource development everywhere, HR. The same extension of the idea, nature is just resources. We therefore can make use of the rifle of our reason to shoot the bird called nature, which either falls wounded or dead. Behind the hunter's epistemology, there is the reductionism of reality to calculus. Now the question is, what would be the response of the traditional cultures in facing this overpowering, bulldozing reductionism of reality to calculus? How can the traditional cultures creatively respond to this new situation? This is a very important question. I believe this in facing this alluring, attractive, dominant, monochromatic, bulldozing technocratic vision, the traditional cultures seem to have an ambivalent attitude, wanting the material blessings of this technocratic civilization on the one hand, and equally feeling deracination, alienation, impotence especially with the arrival of new forms of technocracy, which in our times we are beginning to feel in the form of artificial intelligence or alien intelligence, as one recent thinker would call it. So the question is, what is the way forward for cultures, particularly the traditional cultures? It's a difficult question, but we may only, in approximations, suggest some kind of response to this bulldozing worldview against which or in front of which all the cultures are almost kneeling down, seeking their blessings of this technocratic vision, which is sweeping our moment. But I think I would like to humbly submit the way forward, I think, is kind of a cultural mutation. And simply put, we may use the word cultural innovation. And not merely aesthetic surgery, cosmetic and temporary and symptomatic solutions. We need more radical response, and I call it as cultural innovation. And by cultural innovation, I understand the ability of the traditions to not only learn from within, but also from without, going beyond the symptomatic and temporary approaches and solutions. And concretely, what does this cultural innovation mean for us, for traditional cultures? It may mean, first of all, that the traditional cultures are invited to sing their own song, do their own dance, and reassert and universalize their priorities, values, and visions, keeping, of course, in view the spirit of the new situation. And these traditional cultures are invited to reassert themselves this time, not in isolation, not in splendid isolation, but they need to do so in mutual criticism and dialogue with the dominant culture. No point in saying that the traditional cultures have the wisdom and no, the wisdom has to be brought into dialogue with the dominant worldview. Only then some fruit can be seen. No point in repeating our age-old wisdom in isolation. You need to do it in dialogue because the dominant vision is calling for dialogue and needs to be interrogated. So, in responding to this worldwide hegemony of the modern technocratic and epistemocratic worldview, I believe all cultures, with no exception, are invited to perform a double task. And they need to overcome double temptation. Let me begin with the temptations, the double temptations. They need to overcome the double temptations. The first temptation is colonialism on the one hand, and cultural apartheid. The second temptation. Colonialism, as you know, is the mentality that we can represent or express the totality of human experience through the notion of a single culture. And cultural apartheid is the opposite, which thinks that there can be no communication possible between the diverse cultures and traditions. So we need to avoid a kind of a double temptation, avoiding therefore solipsism without falling into colonialism, and overcoming monism without falling into dualism, therefore becomes a cultural imperative. Now coming to the double tasks. Number one, we need to universalize the truth experiences of our own tradition. We need to universalize. At the same time, we also need to remember that there are also blind spots each tradition, each culture has. We need to be aware of our own blind spots. Now, one or two words more on these two tasks. What do I mean by universalization? Universalizing the truth experiences does not mean to proclaim universality. that my culture is universal, my tradition. No, that's not the point. Universalization implies an effort to present one's heritage and wisdom to a wider universe. That's the meaning. We just bring to the awareness of the universe the voice, the song, the song and dance of our tradition, and we present. It is an effort to present one's heritage and wisdom to a wider audience in such a way that a person belonging to another clime, another time, another tradition might be able to have some kind of resonance in his or in her own tradition of what is being presented by the other. If I am a Christian, I need to present the Christian tradition in such a way that person belonging to the Hindu tradition, without coming over to the Christian tradition, should be able to have that resonance in her own Hindu tradition. That is the meaning that I am saying. We need to universalize our tradition so that the other persons belonging to another tradition will have some kind of resonance of what we are speaking about in their own tradition. This is the universalizing. And the second, of course, in this, Raymond Panikkar has got very interesting thing to tell. He makes the crucial distinction between human invariance and cultural universals. This is a very, very crucial distinction which is really required for our intercultural moment. There is a distinction between human invariance and cultural universals. What is meant by human invariance? Human invariance are those human acts in which all of us, by virtue of being human, invariably participate irrespective of the clime or time that we belong to. For example, all of us are born. All of us eat. All of us believe. All of us reason. All of us sleep. All of us love. All of us hate. And of course, one day, after all these activities, one day we will die. So we are born and we will also die. These are human acts by which everybody in the world, irrespective of whatever belonging they have, would have to participate in these human acts, and therefore there is no exception. Invariably we need to participate in these human acts. Here is where we have the universality. All of us are born, all of us do so many human activities, and then we die. Universality can be seen only here. But the meaning, the interpretation, the explanation, the understanding that we have on each of these human acts is going to be culturally specific. And therefore, the Hindu meaning of birth is not the Christian meaning of birth. The African meaning of body is not the same as the Japanese understanding of body. Just to give you some examples. And therefore, the interpretation will be culturally specific. Human acts are universal. They are human invariant, but not the interpretation we give to these human acts. And therefore, they will be culturally tinged and colored by the ground or the culture from which all these human acts are perceived. This is the universalizing aspect, and especially in terms of human invariance and cultural universals. Now, the second important task in our intercultural moment is overcoming blind spots. It basically boils down to a belief that no tradition, nobody can have a 360-degree view of the world. If I am looking at you, if I'm looking, I cannot look at, you need to look at my backdrop and we can share notes. The same thing I can do to you. So we cannot have a 360-degree view of the world. Our perspectives are always have to be relativized, corrected, and complemented because they are always partial. They participate, and that is why they are partial. And Of course, to have everything is to be in the state of paradise. But as long as we are human beings with all our limitation, and still if we claim that we have everything, we will be in fool's paradise. So this is very, very important to keep in mind. The blind spot, every tradition has got its own blind spots. In the sense that it is not a negative thing, but it's a human condition to be partially placed. It's a human condition. It's not a negative thing at all. But we need to be aware of our partiality, and so that we can participate. Now, this brings in the metaphor of a window. I would like to elaborate a little bit. And those of you who have an interest to learn more of Raymond Panikkar, later on, maybe you can have a little Google search on the window view of the world, where Raymond Panikkar, you will have the joy of seeing him, and he is beautifully, just 5 minutes talk. And then I would like to summarize a few words from that beautiful depiction of Raymond Panikkar on the window view of the world. The window, of course, of a house is reminding us that we always have a window view of the world, in the sense that our view will depend on the shape, size, color, and filter of our window. Our view will depend on all these factors: shape, size, color, filter, and so on. And therefore, the window, with all its possibility of view that it can help us to have of the world, it is also equally limiting our view. Sometimes it could happen that our view of the world from our window is so panoramic, so full, that we may feel or even proclaim that it is the best possible view in the world. Of course, while granting that possibility, a person who stands outside the window may perhaps situate better our limited view of the world, and even find out that our view of the world through our window is, after all, a view, small perspective, small peep, small view that is coming through kind of a pigeonhole. Especially a person who is standing outside the house will be able to relativize our view as coming from the pigeonhole. We may not realize it, but our person standing outside our house will be able to situate and limit our perspective better. So we are able to see all that we can see through our culture, through our window, through our religion, discipline, or whatever belongingness we may claim. But since there are also other windows and houses available in the world of humanity, differing and different perceptions and viewpoints are perfectly possible. Like the mountain. A mountain has a view, and everybody is going to have different views on the mountain. Whose view is correct? Whose view of the mountain is correct? I would say no view is correct, because all the views are also valid, in the sense this is corresponding to the window view of the world that I have just described to you. So in this condition, on our part, what is required is to keep our ears open, not just eyes, very masculine, but ears, the feminine. We need to resurrect the feminine more in our times, in that sense. We need to keep our ears open so that we can listen to the descriptions made by our neighbor from his or her own house. We don't need to go to his or her house, nor are we required to go. And we cannot go. We cannot leave our house anytime. We have our own belonging, our own house. But sitting in our house, though we may not be able to have a view of what my neighbor has, but we can simply listen to the description of life made by our neighbor. So all that is required is our readiness to listen to another description made from another house. Without going to the house, I can sit in my house, provided I keep my ears open. I can hear the description coming from my neighbor, and we can share notes. And that is the meaning of being obedient. Obedient is not in servitude. Ob audire is a very interesting Latin root for the word obedient. Obedient means to listen to somebody with loving attention is the meaning of obedient. Ob audire, to listen to somebody with loving attention. And that is the feminine receptivity, I think, which is much, 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 much required in our time. That is why we need to resurrect the feminine dimension in philosophy and in all aspects of our life. And we keep our window open also for one other reason. That is to allow fresh air to flow in, and so that we may not die of suffocation remaining in our own house. As Gandhi has said, I keep the doors and windows of my tradition open so that the fresh air can come in, but I refuse to be blown off my feet. So this means standing on our own ground, we flourish and we become enlivened by receiving fresh air from outside. So we need to keep the windows open even to to remain alive in our own in our house. And if the windows are closed, we are going to die of suffocation. So that is the idea of the window. So to conclude, friends, it all finally amounts to an experience of what I call contingency. Contingency, a recognition that we are not sufficient in constructing the entire picture of reality all by ourselves, and that the universal range of human experience cannot be represented or exerted by a single human phylum, however glorious, ancient, powerful it may claim itself to be. Humility and receptivity, therefore, have to become the intercultural values for our times. And after all, it is only in receiving, conceiving can take place, even biologically. So thank you, friends. I'm happy to have shared these few reflections for you on interculture, and we can converse now, if you wish. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Raj, for that enlightening lecture. Your reflections were truly amazing. Uh, we now head towards a Q&A session. The participants can either type their questions in the chat box or raise their hand using the button on the bottom of the screen if they want to ask the question directly.
Well, may I start? Sanket,
Oh,
may I?
Alakji. Good afternoon, Alakji. I am really blessed by
Good
your presence.
afternoon. Good afternoon. I really like, but I was a little bit late. And some internet
Oh, don't
connectivity
worry.
was not there in my place,
Alakji,
and
our
it was
life
very
goes on.
cold.
Don't worry,
So
our life
somehow
goes
either
on. Good to see
I
you.
just managed to join.
Good to see
Very
you.
nice. It's nice to see you too. And you are still continuing with this is the theme of interculturalism.
Well,
Uh,
as long as the need still remains.
Need is there, but I may I differ with you because I have done also some project work with ICPR on the subject and wrote a
Yeah, I'm
book
aware.
on that,
Yeah.
and PC has given award for that. But my
Oh,
conclusion is that we are in need of transculturalism.
okay.
I don't want to remain at the level of interculturalism. I traveled from monoculturalism to multiculturalism, then multiculturalism to interculturalism, then to transculturalism, because I found that even in interculturalism, there is the concept of culture itself is something like a closed box. You are not treating it as like that only, but still the window remains somewhat very constricted. We just watch and see the others, but we don't participate. It seems like that. But ultimately, our cultures are transcultural. We have already a lot of mixing in our cultures throughout history, and we should not treat our cultures as a closed box like entities from which we cannot transcend. So, unless and until we recognize the foreignness in our own cultures, we will not be able to what we call the respect and participate and what you call the full flourishing of life, because it is very true that every culture has given somewhat expression to a particular mode of thinking. So unless until we are ready to transcend, and in this world of globalization, we cannot live like separate entities. So we have to continue with our cultural identities, but we have to take them a little bit loosely, recognizing that a lot of um, interaction and a lot of give and take is already there, and we must increase that. So my take is little bit different. I would like you to respond to this idea of transculturalism. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, our concern is same. Maybe our now our pathos are same. Our concern is same. Maybe now our logos is becoming little different, but ultimately we are united in our aspiration to dialogue. Now, Alok ji, I don't know, in the beginning of my talk, I was trying to give a little interpretation for the word culture. You know, many definitions of culture possible, and I would like to risk one more by suggesting, at least it has got the advantage of being short. Culture is the ground on which we walk. And the idea of ground immediately, as you know, more than history, it brings the idea of diversity, pluralism. Pluralism is different from plurality, and this is the contribution that I would like to make for the word intercultural philosophy. You know, plurality is remaining at the level of multiculturalism. You know, you be there and I be here, and then we will have some kind of life together. That is multi-plurality. But pluralism is recognition, a radical recognition that I cannot be I without you. You cannot be you without me. It is that the idea of trans is already coming in this understanding of I cannot be I without you, and you cannot be you without me. The idea of trans is coming in this idea of and moreover, ultimately the model for intercultural philosophy is proceeding from the model of reality itself. And I was trying to point out one model of reality, which is of course suggested by also philosopher theologian Raymond Panica, cosmotheantric. Reality is not God alone, reality is not the world alone, and reality is not human alone. Cosmotheantric, cosmic, divine at the human at the same time. And therefore you can see the trans element already. Reality as such is not cut off, it is not pigeonholed, it's not there is no human without there is no human without God and the world. There is no world without the human and the divine, and there is no divine without the human and the cosmic. So one in the other, they, as they call it, perichoresis, mutual indwelling. This is the model. I think if accepted, more or less it comes to the idea of trans. But the idea is inter. It is inter in the sense that that one's identity is never purely in itself, but it is always in conversation, and in connection. But one problem I have with trans, sometimes a trans, if it is understood in the sense of transparency, I accept. It is interesting. Trans means, it need not go beyond, most of the time, transcendental. The word trans is used always in terms of going beyond. But trans, I think, as in our times, in your sense, I think can be used in the sense of transparency, going through transparency, and a transparent cloth, for example. So transcendence has to be, the word trans has to be interpreted in terms of transparency, going through, and it is in going through that we discover our connection. So I understand your little critique on the word inter, but I prefer to remain with the word inter, because the way I understand intercultural philosophy as a perichoresis, mutual indwelling of one another. There is no pure cutoff, but we always participate. It is all mixed, and it is, like reality is mixed. Reality is not God alone. Reality is not world alone. Reality is not human alone. It is cosmotheandric. So I think cosmotheandric model is a good, very good pluralistic model, not plurality, but pluralism, in the sense of realization of contingency, that no one single dimension is sufficient to constitute reality. And this can become a good model also for the disciplines and cultures and worldviews. No single religion is sufficient to construct the meaning of life by itself. So our pathos are same, our concerns are some, Alokji, but maybe the terminologies differ, and we can give interpretation. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. You are coming closer. We are coming closer.
Well, important thing is not to come to close each other, close to reality, of course. Thank you, Alok. Thanks.
Yes, Professor Koshi.
Yeah, part of my concern was raised by Alokji when he mentioned about monoculturalism to multiculturalism to trans. But then it was an interesting response, Professor Anthony Lewis, that inviting our attention to the word trans. In which sense do we interpret it? That leaves me with the problem whether I hope.
Going above cultures.
I hope Alokji is maybe interpreting it as going through, in the sense of going through, rather than not transcending, because transcending would again leave us with the problem of, I mean, it's quite easy to understand where do we transcend from, but then where do we transcend to remains quite problematic, that transcending to becomes quite problematic. So in that sense, perhaps one need to be a little more aware of how do we understand that word trans. So thanks for that pointing out. But my worry is, I appreciate this line of interpreting reality, interpreting the notion of culture, etc. But somehow when we talk about interculture, transculture, etc., it seems there is an assumption. I'm not quite sure whether you have made it, but quite often the assumption is that there is something called a pure culture. One's own culture is something pure, in the sense which is different from, quote unquote different from the other. So I was just referring to one of the articles by Professor Jayan Mohanty from a phenomenological perspective. He says, for the sake of argument, one could still say there is a sense of a pure ego, for the sake of argument, though that is also problematic, given the dialogical notion of self, etc. But in some sense, one may say that one can think about reducing to the sphere of one's ownness in the sense in which Husserl talks about. But Mondi is very clear that we cannot talk about one's own culture in that sense. One's own culture in the sense of cut off from the other. As you rightly said, the culture, by its very nature is intercultural, or what you call multicultural. In other words, there is nothing like a pure culture of one's own. So from that perspective, perhaps we need to understand this call for opening our world to the others also in that. So that's just a remark. Thank you.
I think you are right on the point, Professor Koshi. Probably a simple metaphor like rainbow will give us the idea of the pluralism that I am speaking about. It's not plurality, but pluralism. The difference between plurality and pluralism is just, the differences are just recognized and then they are maintained. But pluralism is the radical recognition of my insufficiency, contingency. I am not sufficient. I think that is the starting point for me to come to you. Otherwise, it will be patronizing. Otherwise, it could be, condescending. The rainbow example is kind of the traveling of the many, to put it little poetically. Rainbow is nothing but the traveling of the many toward the one without ceasing to be different. So there is the affirmation of different worldviews, different colors. At the same time, essentially, there is also kind of a feeling of towards, and this oneness is not monistic oneness. One language, one culture, one religion. That is not the monistic oneness, but kind of a pluralistic oneness. The traveling of the many towards the one without ceasing to be different. So I think in the sense that our culture, we have got something of specificity. At the same time, it's very difficult to say where the specificity ends and where it begins. Like the rainbow, where the colors mingle. It's difficult to say where they mingle. And we need to maintain our individuality and specificity. At the same time, we cannot really absolutize our specificity because, the cosmotheantric reality, one in the other. There is nothing purely divine. There is nothing purely human and purely cosmic. One in the other. So to be human, you need to be divine and cosmic. To be cosmic, you need to be divine and human, and so on. So it's a good, interesting model, but translating this into daily practice is a challenge. I understand that. But it's a good model. Very, very inspiring model.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, some students can ask. I am speaking only for you, friends.
Sanjay, there are some queries in the chat box.
Oh. Can somebody read for me?
Yeah, I will read it. This is from Aruvi Rajamanikam. She writes, thank you, Professor. How would the cultural innovation view account for intersectionality within an intercultural framework? That even within any culture, people are differently situated socially, economically, politically, etc. That some may not have access to windows. Surely, then cultural innovation may not always be the opening, receiving. It purports to be move forwards. To move towards. Sorry,
Yeah. So it's a very deep question. I do not think I have adequate answer, but I can only clarify what I meant by that innovation, cultural innovation. I said by cultural innovation, I understand the ability of the tradition to learn not only from within but also from without. So, meaning to say that the other person can radically contribute to my own what I am. For example, we don't speak language. we don't speak language as such. We always speak a language. A language means means many things. It could be our own religion, our own discipline, our own language, and we always speak a language. We don't even speak the language. Neither we speak languages, nor we speak the language, but we always speak a language. So all that I have is my perspective. All that you have is your perspective. But this perspective have to synchronize and they need to become a symphony. But nobody can become the orchestra conductor in this case. Everybody has to be just playing his or her own tune. So, but that's one interesting point you made, that there are people who are not blessed with Windows also. And that I'm trying to understand your word. What I mean by window is that we always have a perspective. A perspective.
Thank you, sir. Any more questions?
Just a continuation of this thought. From what you have said about the orchestra and playing, each one playing his or her instrument, or using his or her vocals. Perhaps the point is that, as you said, the invitation to more attentive. You were talking about invoking the feminine, not merely the visual.
Yeah.
The point is that the orchestra is something which you hear. You can listen to that. In the process of each one playing his or her instrument, the one who listens to that hears the orchestra. That's what perhaps the point is, that it comes from the receptivity.
Receptivity rather than the active playing. Yeah, you need to equally pay attention to what is being played by others also. Yeah.
Right.
Receptivity, the listening attitude is what. Which is very much lacking in our times, because our eyes are very powerful. We are very masculine, invading, controlling, and conquering, but very little time is spent in including. Invading is now the massive moment of our times, but including, along with invading, has to be cultivated. In that sense. Few years ago, I have contributed one article called Lady Philosophy. So those of you who would like to refer to this, that article, I discovered the feminine dimension of philosophy. You can Google and get that. It's published by one Italian Serpit journal. So Lady Philosophy is the title. Those of you who would like to read more of my little insight in this talk can benefit from that. There I speak about the music and receptivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Any more questions? If you want to correspond with the speaker through email, the email ID of the speaker is pinned in the chat box. Now I request Mr. Jonathan to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Sanket. We'd like to thank our esteemed speaker today, Dr. Anthony Savari Raj, for delivering a wonderful talk to all of our students at SSPIS. I'd like to thank the Dean of SSPIS, Professor Sanjot Pai Vednikar, Professor Koshi, for being present here with us, all other faculty members of the school, all research scholars at Goa University, all participants, faculty, students, and others from and outside Goa University. And we'd also like to thank all those who helped in poster design and publicizing the event.
So, by way of closing, I can only offer my profound gratitude once again to your university, your school, and I'm really glad and honored by the presence of Dean also, Professor Sanjyot. Thank you, Professor Koshi, for giving me this absolute pleasure, privilege.
Thanks for sparing your time with us.
No, I'm
On a very
extremely,
early morning.
extremely happy to have shared my insights to these youngsters, and thanks for giving me this platform.
So now at least there is daybreak now, I think, in Jamaica.
Yeah, daybreak.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for this privilege and pleasure. Absolute delight. Thank you, friends. Thank you, Sangeet, for organizing so well and very meticulously. Thank you, Sangeet. Thanks.
So, here to you, Professor Raj, for your insightful presentation and participation. Or want to revisit today's talk or share with your colleagues, the recording of this lecture will be posted on our university.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Wednesday.
So thank you.